If Gojo looks at Prismo, he would know where the old man is and then try to aim for the old man, and Prismo could be taken surprised by this. And if Gojo gets to the old man and then kills him, then Prismo kind of just loses. Hey, I'm Galvino, and today we're talking Prismo versus Gojo. But as you can see, this is my channel, so I'm just here to give a quick summary of how Satoru Gojo's infinity works. While it is complex and can be explained in a complex way, I'm going to try and keep it as simple as possible. Basically, the power of infinity is him using spatial manipulation to his whims to try and accomplish certain goals. The main thing he uses it for is increasing the space or distance between targets and then himself, slowing them down to the point where they appear to stop moving altogether. Imagine a passive, invisible bubble around himself that stops any and all things from hitting him using space itself as protection. If he perceives something as a threat, then infinity will block that thing from touching him. Meanwhile, certain things like oxygen molecules can pass through just fine because he doesn't perceive that as a threat. If someone is trying to fight Gojo, basically what they would need is a few things. One, they would need to be above infinite speed, so distance itself becomes irrelevant. Or two, they would need attacks or powers that ignore space-time altogether. Or three, possess magic or weapons that are anti-magic in nature and basically nullify magical powers. As for other powers, he can use a power called blue to pull or attract things. Then he has red to push or repel things. Then he has purple, which is basically just a ball that destroys things in its direct path and can become a bomb that destroys everything around it. Pretty much his ultimate move.
Prismo is a wishmaster in Adventure Time. His job in the cosmic hierarchy is to grant wishes to individuals that are able to reach his time room. The time room is an infinite dimension at the center of the multiverse, outside of space and time. The wishes he grants can vary from something as simple as a sandwich to something as grand as altering, creating, or destroying whole universes. He's unusual compared to most people as he isn't three-dimensional, but a projection on the wall. Actually, it's even weirder than that. He's the dream of an old man who actually turns out to be Jake the dog. In terms of how powerful he has complete control over space and time, at least at a reality warping level. And he also has complete control over his time room, which is infinite, as I said earlier. But what's more interesting about it is that it exists outside of space and time, like I mentioned earlier, which could indicate it exists in a higher plane or dimension than space and time. At the very least, we've seen the possibility of fourth-dimensional objects in Adventure Time, so Prismo being the guy creating and destroying universes that contain those fourth-dimensional structures could make him fourth if not fifth-dimensional in terms of his power, which is obviously ironic as he's literally two-dimensional when it comes to his body. To put it in perspective, the difference between three-dimensional beings and four-dimensional beings is the same level of difference as between you and a drawing. You're so much above it that it can't even harm you. Not only can a lower dimensional object not interact with you, but you can't interact with it either. That's right, even drawings, as crazy as it might sound, are three-dimensional. So think about something less three-dimensional than a drawing. And even my head starts to hurt. Even independent of that. Again, Prismo can just create and destroy universes. Basically, every universe is actually a small multiverse with 50 to 60 universe-size realms, making Prismo multiversal. Now that we mentioned the most relevant parts about these characters, how do you think it will go?
Well, I think we got a god, Prismo, and then the false god, Gojo, who proclaims himself as the honored one. And in this battle, Prismo would pretty much show him who is actually the honored one. And he would just kind of just wish Gojo out of existence.
Yeah, I feel like that's what most people would say. Prismo can wish him away. He can wish away universes. Why couldn't he just wish Gojo away? But what could Gojo even do? Like, let's say he doesn't do that. How would their abilities interact if, let's say, Prismo doesn't just zap him out of existence the first chance he gets?
Well, stuff like Limitless obviously does nothing. But then you have, Infinite Void, which is, besides Hollow Purple, is Gojo's ultimate move, where he forcefully kind of sends information straight into your brain to make it so your brain pretty much becomes fried. And in this case, since Prismo doesn't have like a physical brain, but yet he has eyes because he can see the people that are in his room. And I think if you pay attention to the animation, usually his eyes kind of just follow a person as they're moving near him. So it's kind of hard to say whether or not Infinite Void would work on Prismo. Because, like, does he have, like, what is he, like, where is the information going? You know what I'm saying? But one thing, if you're really charitable with Infinite Void, maybe you can say that the information would actually go to the person who is dreaming up Prismo into existence in the first place. In which case, that person would probably die, and then Prismo would disappear. Under that premise, with charity, Gojo could win, catching Prismo off guard. Otherwise, with no physical brain involved, there's no evidence Infinite Void would work on Prismo, since it's stated somewhere, Gege, the author of JJK, stated that cursed spirits have different brains than humans, therefore they kind of resist Infinite Void just a bit better. Like, their brains aren't destroyed per se, and they can still kind of recover. So it kind of depends how much information Gojo can send into their brain, where if he sends in enough, they would still die. But the point is, they resist it more compared to humans. So my point is that there's a lot of emphasis on the physicality of the brain. So since Prismo doesn't have a physical brain, it most likely would not work. And him being able to see Jake or whatever, however his body works, is probably some sort of magic nonsense where Infinite Void is not really applicable to.
While it's possible for Gojo to send the information to Prismo's actual body through the pink Prismo, I think it's not likely, as the information would have nowhere to go. Prismo's not actually there in 3 dimensions, he's only a 2-dimensional shadow on the wall. So Unlimited Void wouldn't have anything to interact with. Not to mention that it would only wake up the real Prismo, who would just go back to sleep afterwards. It wouldn't actually kill him, because he's Jake, and we literally see early in the series that Jake can imagine everything at once, for more than just a second. So I would argue very much that it would wake up the real Prismo, which would kill Pink Prismo, but then the real Prismo could just go back to sleep, and the other Prismo would come back and could win the battle by himself. All of that aside, I don't think the domain expansion could even trap Prismo, as he's a shadow on the time room wall. You would need to argue that the domain expansion encapsulates the whole time room, and that just either isn't possible or gives Prismo complete control over the situation again, because you would just have nothing changed. They would still be in the time room. But this could be one of those things where Prismo doesn't take him seriously and gets surprised or something. We've seen that happen before. Would Prismo even take Gojo seriously at all?
Well, since Gojo is not a threat to Prismo at all, he would not, similar to the Lich. So, therefore, the only way Gojo could win here is if, with the 6 eyes, Gojo is able to detect that there is an old man nearby that is dreaming Prismo into existence. And the reason Gojo would be able to detect this is because the 6 eyes pretty much tells Gojo exactly how any powers work in the case for JJK, if he looks at somebody using some sort of power of some sort, he would instantly know how the power works by just looking at the ability. So basically, the idea here is that if Gojo looks at Prismo, he would know where the old man is, and then try to aim for the old man, and Prismo could be taken surprised by this. And, you know, if Gojo gets to the old man and then kills him, then Prismo kind of just loses. It kind of just depends how fast Prismo could react and know what Gojo is about to do. Now, Gojo also has teleportation, so he could just kind of warp reality to the point where he's right in front of the old man kind of instantly and then just destroy him. Meanwhile, Prismo didn't have the reaction time to stop the Lich from killing the old man that was dreaming him into existence. So therefore, there is some plausible, reason Gojo could win if you give him some charity with the 6 eyes and with the infinite void, maybe. And those would be my 2 win cons. Assuming Prismo just isn't bloodlusted and wishes him into, like, oblivion.
Yeah, I could see that being Gojo's only way of winning. Prismo just lets him wander to the time room until he finds the body and wakes him up. Though, again, if Prismo has even the slightest of suspicions, he could just zap him out of existence, as his reality warping powers are just on another level. If he can destroy universes, he can destroy Gojo. And there's nothing to say that the barrier he puts around himself would even do anything to stop it. Prismo could just erase the space-time around Gojo, and that's it. And actually, you could very much argue that if they are in the time room and they are outside of space and time, Gojo's abilities wouldn't even work, because manipulating space and time where there's no space and time might be kind of impossible, meaning that even weaker characters could defeat Gojo in the time room, as his ability might just not work at all. So yeah, at the end of the day, I think it's pretty clear that you have a multiversal guy, and then you have a guy who's like mountain level but has like a cool ability. But his ability has to do with controlling space, and the other guy is literally a reality warper that creates and destroys universes and exists outside of space and time. So it's not really fair for Gojo, especially in the time room again, where there might not be any space for him to manipulate.